Okay, we're on chapter 6, the hot bath, and yesterday when I was in there we had read chapter 5, and chapter 5 was called Getting By, and it talked about how difficult of a time he and his brothers and sisters were having finding food, that Mom was not present the way that moms ought to be, and at the very end of the chapter he said eventually her neglect caught up and the Department of Human Services got involved. So that takes us to chapter 6, the hot bath. Chapter 6. Looking back, it's difficult to believe that it all came down to a bath gone wrong. But life can change that fast. Mom was sleeping off her daily dose of prescription pills, and Lavelle and I decided to give the twins and Dijon a bath. I was 6 years old, but by that time I was a pro at giving baths, as I had done so many times before. I ran lukewarm water in the tub. I put the twins at the back of the tub and Dijon in front by the faucet. Together, Lavelle and I washed our siblings from head to toe. We checked their ears for roaches and then let them play in the tub for a while. It was just a normal night at the Carter house when Keisha suddenly reached around Dijon and turned on the hot water. Scalding water rained on Dijon. I jumped off the toilet seat and turned off the faucet, but it was too late. Already blisters the size of quarters had appeared on his left side, and Dijon just sat stunned, not even a whimper. Lavelle pulled him out of the tub, and I ran to the bedroom to wake and tell Mom. She started screaming, "My baby, my baby!" and ran to the bathroom. Lavelle was holding Dijon, who still had yet to make a sound. The blisters were not so quiet. They had already grown angry-looking and merged into one giant blister that covered the entire left side of his body. Screaming and crying, Mom grabbed Dijon from Lavelle's arms, wrapped him in towels, and told us all to get in the car. Mom drove as fast as the car would go, ignoring traffic lights and stop signs. We pulled into the Stillwater Hospital parking lot, and Mom jumped out of the car with Dijon in her arms and started running for the entrance. Inside, a nurse took my little brother from Mom's arms back to the examination room. Lavelle, the twins, and I sat in the waiting room for what seemed like hours, hoping Dijon was okay. We were all so scared. While we were waiting, a woman carrying a stack of folders appeared at the front desk and asked to see Glendola Vick. The receptionist told her Miss Vick was back in the exam room with the doctors. The woman with the folders then flashed her ID badge, and the two of them disappeared beyond the double doors that led back to where Mom and Dijon were. I didn't recognize the woman and wondered why she was asking to see my mom. Minutes later, the woman was standing in front of us in the waiting room. She kneeled and told us she worked for the Department of Human Services and needed to ask us some questions about what happened to our brother. She told us everything would be okay, and she needed us to tell the truth. Lavelle asked the woman where our mom was, and the lady said she was still with Dijon. But we didn't need to wait for her. With that, she put her folders down on the end table and pulled out a notebook and reached in her purse for a pen. "Start from the beginning," she said. Lavelle and I took turns telling her how he came to be burned in the bathtub. She took notes, looking up at us from time to time. When I told her about waking Mom up, she asked me to repeat that part again, so I did, explaining that Mom had been sleeping while Lavelle and I gave the twins and Dijon a bath. I told her we did that all the time. She asked me if my mom had been working all day, and is that why she was asleep? I told her no, Mom was sick and had taken some pills so she would feel better, and they had made her sleepy. The lady kept writing even after I stopped talking. She wrote for a long time, but eventually she put her pen back in her purse and put her notebook on the stack of folders on the table. She then told us that she was going to sit with us until Mom came out of the emergency room. When Mom finally returned, she was carrying Dijon. My brother was wrapped in bandages like a little mummy. Still crying, Mom signed some papers and loaded us in the car and took us home. I thought the worst was over. I couldn't have been more wrong. Once we got home, Mom laid Dijon down on the couch and started screaming at Lavelle and me about telling the DHS worker what had happened. She said thanks to our big mouths, the courts were going to take us all away from her. You are never to tell DHS anything, she hissed. Our telling DHS the truth that night was the beginning of many investigations into our home life. The DHS caseworkers would come to wherever we were living and do random house visits. Many times they found us alone, playing in a dirty, roach-infested home with no food. Time and time again they took reports and left us the way they found us. I knew my mom was scared of them, but I truly didn't understand why. Nothing ever seemed to come from what they found or saw, no matter how bad. To keep them off her back, Mom started dropping us off at my grandparents' house when she went out at night. My grandparents lived in Stillwater, but for some reason were not on speaking terms with Mom at the time. They agreed to keep us nonetheless. But for Mom, nights too often turned into days, and she would take us to our grandparents, telling them and us that she would be back in the morning. Time after time, however, she did not show up till days later. When she did finally return, she and my grandpa would argue as Grandpa tried to explain to her that she was not being fair to her parents or her children. Mom always tried to turn it back on Grandpa, saying he just did not care about her or her children. Still, by 1978, we were practically living with our grandparents, and I rarely saw Mom. I was 8 years old. Alright, that's chapter 6. I will be back tomorrow and we'll read chapter 7 together, Meet the Carters. So I'm assuming that that's going to be about meeting the rest of his family. Have a great afternoon and I will see you tomorrow.